All right, I want to cover two things today. One of them is how to start the artwork for your next assignment, which is going to be the parallax. And then the other thing is how to finish up the hologram one. So I'll do the parallax one first. I mentioned last week to get your to try to find an image, an environment that you could utilize. After searching, you probably find that like concept art is typically a good area to go with because concept art environments typically have very little characters actually in them, and that's typically what we want. We want to find something that has a lot of depth to it, a lot of detail. We don't want something that is very barren. If we went and looked for, that's the wrong one, isn't it? Yes, it is. That's the right one. Something like this, not very interesting. There's not a whole lot of things going on. Also, the kind of terrain that's there is not very good. Even this, it's just very boring. We want to find something that has a lot of foreground, middle ground, and background elements and things in between. So something like, let's say this one is good because there's a lot of different levels. There's stuff that's way in the background, there's stuff that's in the middle, and then by pushing our camera forward inside of After Effects, we can actually make some of these other elements foreground elements, okay? Same thing here. You can see there's some background stuff, there's some foreground stuff, then there's, the middle ground stuff, background stuff, and foreground stuff, okay? So you want to find an image. You're not using this as a, I'm going to copy this exact. You're using it as a reference to build your own stuff off of. That way you're not starting from a blank slate, okay? Even this one could be a good one. There's lots of little details here. You download an image, make your folders, put it in your artwork folder, and then inside of Illustrator, you make a new document that's 960 by 540, landscape, and then you start there. If you forget, you can do a place, drop your image into Illustrator, and then you can use this again as reference. Now what we're not going to do is we're not going to trace every item, or actually any of the items. What we're going to do is use this as a way to kind of look at things and say, okay, what kind of items are here? And then I'm going to build those items. Now eventually what's going to happen is we're going to build these things and then we're going to place them inside of After Effects. So don't think of it as I need to draw it as it is. Think of these as individual elements that we're building, and then inside After Effects, we'll set them up, we'll rotate them, we'll put them in position, whatever we need to do, okay? So like for instance, this sign right here is on an angle, but I'm going to draw it like this, so it's perfectly straight up. When I'm in After Effects, then I can rotate it. That way I have a little bit more freedom. I also want to draw these things bigger than I think I need to, or longer than I think I need to. So in this image, you can see that it's only this part that sticks in here. Well, I went further down because I want to make sure that I have plenty of room in case I need to pull the camera back a little bit or move the item back further, okay? So I want to have that ability to do that. So these are just basic shapes. This is a cube that I started off, added divisions, and then just kind of pushed and pulled points until it kind of looked like a stick. Same thing with this. I just kind of, I think I used the pencil tool on this and just drew the shape of that. Again, it's kind of flat. It's just a separate element. Here's another stick. This is this stick right here. If I'm going to do this other cross stick, in the image it's at this angle because we're seeing the perspective of it. We're ignoring the perspective and just drawing it straight, and then we'll do all the perspective stuff inside of After Effects. So if I start with a rectangle and I go like so, that looks good. And then I just go in with my pen tool and I just add some divisions here, 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 here. Maybe I'll get rid of that point there, get rid of this point here, add a couple more points. And there's other tools too. You could use divide, you could use, a whole bunch of stuff. There we go. Right, and I can just keep tweaking this until I get it to look like the kind of stick that I want this to look like. Perfect-ish enough, okay? So I just keep doing that for every element. When I get to something like this tree, the tree is actually rounded, cylindrical. We're not going to be able to draw that cylindrical, so we're going to draw it like we're seeing it, just like a flat image. So we would draw the tree very similar to that. So let's say I started with this, and then I went with my pen tool and just added some points. Again, you could draw these right from the pen tool. I would spend more time doing this, but this is the idea of it, is that we would want to build this so we're looking at the tree basically from just this one point. This isn't something we're going to be like spinning around the tree. We're going to basically just be pushing our camera through either straight, at a slight angle, pulling back. It's not going to be like coming in and zipping around. This is not a full 3D environment. This is a After Effects 3D environment. Okay, so there's my tree. Again, I could tweak it and modify it some more. I could maybe add another little area here where this thing would come out further. Let's see, like that. This. And get rid of the stroke on here. There we go. And tweak some of these so that lines up better. And maybe adjust the curvature of that one. All right, stop playing with me. There we go. There we go. So something like that, maybe more of these, whatever. Okay. When I get to something like this house right here, this hut, I could draw that perfectly flat, but what I want to do is give that a bit more 3D. As my camera slides by, I want it to feel like I'm kind of moving past the house in a more 3D way, especially because I can take this house and I can rotate it in After Effects like as it is 3D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the sides of it. So here is one side of the house. There's the window. And then here's the roof. Now these definitely do not look very good right now. They're just flat coloring. I'll get to the color selection in a minute. But once we're in After Effects, we'll be able to apply textures to these, which will make them feel a little bit more finished. Okay, right now we're just got flat colors. Okay, so in After Effects, I would take this, and then I would be able to actually build a somewhat 3D paper version of this house that could then be passed by. When I get to the hologram stuff, I'll show some of that so you can see it. Any of the details that I would want on here, like these icicles, I could build them as part of the roof. If they're going a different direction, like these are going this way and then coming down, I would build just separate things. Especially with the amount of icicles that are in this area, or snow, I may want to just have a collection of these. Where's my pen tool? Like this. I'll go to my width tool, make this bigger. I will not go to my width tool yet because I don't have a stroke on this. There we go. Now I can go to the width tool and make this bigger. And then I'm going to go to outline this. I'll add some extra points in here. And then just give this a little bit more shape. There we go. So there's one icicle. I can duplicate it, make a different icicle. Maybe this one's a little bit longer. Maybe this one doesn't look so much like a bow tie or a regular tie. There we go. So there could be another one. I could duplicate it again. Okay. So you'll do that for any item that's in your scene. Your ground will be a flat plane. Okay. So you don't need to worry too much about that. If you have something that has more dunes to it, you would have a flat plane that's going to be your ground, and then you would have these like duned things that we placed like cards sticking in the ground. Okay. Same thing with a hill or anything like that. This thing here, this is just going to be an extra dune, and then my tree will come out of that. If I have this one hut built, once I have it set up, I can just duplicate it for that one that's way in the back there. If I have one tree built, I can modify it some and have another tree. Okay. Every item that's going to be a separate item will be on a separate layer. So this stuff here, if I'm going to use the same texture, they could just be on one layer. If it's going to be something that is going to be a different texture, then this item would be on one layer, this item will be on another layer. If I'm going to animate it, that item gets on another layer too. So this flag right here, that will kind of animate and kind of sway a bit, so that will be on a separate layer. Okay. For my colors, I just used a square. I went to my eyedropper, and then I went and found the color scheme inside here. So I found like a lighter blue. There's a light blue right there. I think I toned it down because it was a little too bright. I went to this kind of middle blue. There we go. There's like this dark color right here. And there's that. And then for this other brown color that I have in the bottom, I couldn't find like a good, like no matter where I picked, I was getting like this weird green, which is definitely there. There's definitely a green there. I wasn't getting like the brown that I wanted. So I just kind of picked this color and then slid my hue until I found a nice brown that would be a nice additional color to this, okay? These colors are not the exact as those. Ideally, you want to make sure that you pick colors that look like they go together. These ones look like they go together pretty much. And that's it. When you're done with this, you should basically have just a sheet of a bunch of different assets that when we get in After Effects, we can put together and build the scene. Think of it like if you had these things when you were younger, you would get these things on a card, you would punch out all these different shapes, and then you can build different things with them. Okay, that was like a toy back when I was a kid. I don't know why my layers are always sticking off there. There we go. Okay, so I would put all this stuff on different layers. So this tree here, that's all one shape. That would go onto a layer, and I would call that tree. This here, if I'm texturing these things differently, I would make sure my stroke is off there. That's kind of weird to have a stroke on that. And I would say T stand horizontal. I didn't move it to that layer. I'll have to move that layer there. And I also have to fix that extra capital T right there. There we go. That goes to this one. This goes to that one. These ones I might use the same texture on both of those, so I'll drop it onto here. This is one of my tarps. I'll throw that on there. Each one of these are separate icicles, so I'll put them on different layers. And I've shown before how we can access stuff from in After Effects. We can break things down, but it's not very fun to do. This is the side of the house, so that will be on one layer, side house. This is the roof. I would grab that, throw that on another layer. There we go. Okay, so there's my assets. I would keep building. Obviously, I need this tree here I want to build. This tree, I might be able to just modify that one. There's one that's kind of dead in the back. I'll draw that one. I need to draw this one that's kind of tattered. There's some branches and stuff here. I'll draw those separately. Okay, and I'll keep drawing that. That's the next step for this. Once you get your environment, you can start building these things. They shouldn't be terribly too complex. Again, the colors will all kind of look a little bit better once we get in After Effects to actually add textures to them to make them feel more like they're, have some coloration, some variations to it. Another thing you can kind of look at is once you have your environment, you can start looking for a character you want to put in there. The character is going to be very simple, basically just a head of a character, and it'll have a very simple animation to them, okay? So mine is actually a concept art from Game of Thrones. So if I go to Game of Thrones characters, here's a bunch of characters. I actually found that the White Walkers were a perfect match for this. This guy is too long of a hair. I didn't want to use him because that's extra stuff I'd have to draw. This one is actually a pretty round head, so I can use that. And I think I'll just have him bounce a little bit and then like scream or something like that and have maybe like ice frost come out of his mouth. I would save this image into the folder. Don't worry about drawing it yet, but just save it so that you have that ready to go. Apparently there's a White Walker, Johnny Walker. Okay, so that'll be your next stages for getting this thing ready so that once we're done with the hologram, we can pick up and get right into the After Effects part of animating this stuff or building it then animating it. Questions on the Parallax stuff yet?